Welcome to KQEG and Seven Rivers Sports. I'm your host, Terry Erickson, and each week since we began the show 11 years ago, we look at fitness and wellness and athletics. But this week, we're going to deviate from that. We have what I think is a hallmark presentation as we go in a different direction. This week, we honor the life of Scott Erickson, who passed away on Saturday, October 10th, a dark day throughout the community. He was a brother, he was a husband, he was a friend, he was an uncle, he was an iconic broadcaster, a member of the Oktoberfest family, and a friend to so many. So it's appropriate enough that three of his best friends, Mike and John Pendleton, Chris Weiss, of course everyone knows who Mike Kearns is, are on the show. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you, Terry.
Let's start with friendship. I really love this quote which says, "What we have once enjoyed as deep friendship, we can never lose. All that love and appreciation becomes a part of us forever and ever." Mike, let's start with you. You were close friends. I remember talking to you shortly after he passed away, and you were struggling like so many of us because the friendship was deep.
I'm struggling right now looking at that picture behind you. It's not easy. He is such a good guy and so knowledgeable as a sportscaster, and it all started one day when we met at the Vogue before an inner city game. And I said, "You going to the game?" He said, "Yeah, I think I'm going to go." I said, "Well, you want to come and help me?" And that was almost 25 years ago. That's when it all started, and he got nothing but better ever since.
He did. Actually, he told me that story shortly before he passed away. And it was a great transformation from him having some illnesses and having some setbacks with his hip and so on. And he always wanted to get into that. But I absolutely agree with you because I listened to many of your broadcasts, and he got better and better. And you built on each other. John, it seems to me, John Pendleton, that when you lose a friend, part of you dies with that person.
Yep.
Have you ever thought about that?
Actually, I have, and one of the things, I've lost a couple of real good friends in the last year, and one of the things I started doing back when my dad passed away was I would think of his best traits, and I'd kind of commit myself to try to be a little bit more like Scotty. And you know, I would have a long ways to go to get there, but you know, it's just something I always think of because he was such a great guy.
Chris Weiss, Scott had just hundreds and hundreds of friends. In fact, I told you the story that shortly after he passed away, the messages began to come. Email, text, you name it, Facebook. Hundreds of thoughts came my way. And you were one of them that reached out to me right away. And he made such a profound impact on all of you and on a wide circle of friends.
He did, and I think there's one primary reason why he had so many friends, hundreds of friends, like you said, is because he was a listener, a good listener. He was inquisitive. When he'd approach you, he'd always ask you what was going on in your life, ask you about your kids, your grandkids, and it was never about him. And when he asked you a question and you started to respond, his wheels weren't rolling about what he was going to say next. He was truly listening to what you had to say, and he had a memory like nobody else's, because the next time you see him, he would remember all this stuff and ask you, you know, how are you doing with this, or how's your son doing, or how's your grandson doing. It was amazing, and I think that's what really endeared him to people, was that he was a listener.
Well said. There's two kinds of listeners. One that just does it because it's maybe expected. The other is authentic.
He was authentic, yes.
Caring, authentic,
right.
Really interested.
Right.
And you hit that on the head.
He really was. He loved people, and he loved to hear about what was going on in everybody's lives.
In an article published in the Lacrosse Tribune, the title was Scott Erickson, the spirit of a champion, and he demonstrated that in many ways. Mike, you and Scott were the gold standard of broadcasting. A lot of people think of Ray Scott, Earl Gillespie, all those, and Don Meredith, Frank Gifford, and all those people. And now it's Al Michaels, Chris Collingsworth, and so on. But it's incredible that the impact that you made. For example, one day I'm running, shortly after he passed away, my own sort of therapy. I'm running down by Riverside Park, and somebody pulls up the car and stops me. Of course, it didn't take long to stop because I don't run very fast. But and said, sorry about your brother passing away. I don't think there's anybody that would disagree that Mike Kearns and Scott Erickson were the gold standard. We're the best that's ever been in this area.
Well, we had so much fun doing it. Like I said, he remembered everything and remembered everybody. We go to do a game, I'd be preparing for the broadcast, and he'd be out talking to parents, players, just all kinds of people, and getting information, and he remembered it all. He was always so remembering.
So you're doing all the work setting up for the game, and he's out just carousing and talking to people.
That's the way I felt sometimes.
Jordy tells the story, our youngest daughter, who you broadcast many of her games, you know, the youngest of 5, and she was just an exceptional athlete. But she would come over and greet you during warm-ups, and she would smile at you. But what she said recently to me was that what she remembers the most is she would come over and rub Scott's head for a sense of just a spirit and good luck charm.
Was she the one that I put on the ear one time, or was that one of the grandkids?
It was one of the grandkids, actually.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. It was fun.
So, but you didn't even know this, maybe, that so many people, when they think of college and high school broadcasters, of course Charlie was #1, and then you took over for your dad. But do you realize how many people listened on a regular basis?
Not really. I never even thought about it. I was just happy to be doing what I was doing, and I could never replace my dad because he was so good. He was just unbelievably good.
Yeah. But you're equally as good.
But,
John Pendleton, growing up on the north side. You know, the definition of a kindred spirit is somebody that immediately can relate to how that person grew up, how they were raised, what they were all about, appreciates their strengths and weaknesses. You were a kindred spirit.
Well, you know, it's funny how Scotty and I intertwined our lives almost by accident in some cases. I know you know, obviously we grew up on Franklin Playground together, but I had bought a house at one point, and without even knowing it, I was unloading furniture in the driveway, and Scott pulled up across the street and pulled into the driveway, and here he lived across the street from me.
Wow.
Which was interesting because that's when I got into distance running because of Scott.
Well, Mary tells a story about running, and you guys were both preparing for the Oktoberfest race. And of course, you came out too fast, and your splits were faster than they should have been. And Scott was in his own comfortable pace, and you would slow down and maybe take a break, and then he would stay in his comfortable pace and catch up to you, and you would finish together. So you were like darting out in front, but maybe going too fast?
Well, it was one of the best things that ever happened to my running career was training with Scott, because he was just a little bit faster than me. He was just like 5% faster than me, and so it made me a better runner. But I always used to joke about this is like a thoroughbred and a Clydesdale here, and so he had an advantage.
So I guess I know who the Clydesdale was.
Right.
All right, well, we're going to step aside just for a minute. We continue with our tribute to the life of Scott Erickson right after this.
With our busy lives, it's a comfort to know that we can still remember loved ones in a traditional way with a monument. Lewiston Monuments in Lewiston, Minnesota has been helping families purchase a monument for over 4 generations. You'll find a large selection of beautiful granite, marble, and bronze monuments, all at competitive prices. And they're a full-service company, so they also do straightening, cleaning, and repair of monuments. Stop in or call for a no-obligation consultation, or visit lewistonmonument.com for more information.
You know, the thing I'm most proud of when I think about our company is the reputation that we've been able to build in this community. Our technicians have done a great job going out and performing magnificent jobs for the customer. And our customers have rewarded us with some really great reviews online.
We have over 150 5-star reviews online right now. Our technicians do a great job out there, and our reviews show it.
We can say without hesitation, when you choose Schneider Heating and Air Conditioning, you'll be glad you did.
Welcome back to Seven Rivers Sports. Special show this week, a tribute to the life of Scott Erickson. Chris Weiss, I love this quote. A friend is like a 4-leaf clover. Hard to find, lucky to have.
Well,
He was lucky to have you as a friend because you were another kindred spirit.
yeah, well, we grew up, as you know, across the street from Franklin Playground. John mentioned it, and that was the center of our world growing up. That's where Scotty, you know, honed his athletic skills and formed his very competitive spirit. And, you know, he went on to become a great athlete at Logan, 3-sport athlete. But, you know, the neat thing about Scott was that after the high school sports were over, he was very eclectic in his interest in sports that he could participate in. You know, as you said, John, long distance runner, very accomplished. He was, you know, golf certainly was the centerpiece of his life as years moved on. We had some great golf outings at Maple Grove with Mike and John, and then on to Cedar Creek. And Scott was a fisherman. He was a hunter. Loved to hike with Mary. He was really, truly, you know, a sportsman.
One thing I like about what you said, Scott Erickson, a humble, likable person, comfortable in his own skin.
Yes, he was. That describes Scott. He was very comfortable. He approached you. He would always say, "How's she going, Otto?" You know, or "How's she going, Johnny?" That was his greeting. It just made you feel comfortable and ready to have a good conversation with him.
Mike, you had the luxury, the blessing of meeting so many people throughout all of your years of broadcasting. And when I was at your home recently, you talked about how blessed you were to be able to follow the Eagles, first the Indians, then the Eagles, to the West Coast, South. I mean, you traveled all over, and then in the postseason, you were able to travel with Scott. I mean, you had just some incredible experiences.
We did have some great times, and we'd stay at the same hotel the team would stay at, and he would always get to meet so many people, you know, the coaches and the players, and get additional knowledge for the broadcast. And he could talk to anybody. It was so easy for him. He was great that way.
So he made you better too, though.
Absolutely.
A lot of people have said that the combination was so strong. John, your friendship began when you were very young, and then it sort of accelerated and became stronger in high school because you were classmates, you were teammates.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know, we shared obviously a lot of common interests, and you know, Scotty, I'd have to say, when I think of all the friends I've had in my life, these two guys included, Scott's I was thinking about this, Scott's the only friend of mine that I would greet with a hug, and to the end. And I don't even know why I did that, but I did, and it was, you know.
I recognize that. What was it like to be a teammate of his? I know we talked about, particularly about being on a basketball team together.
Oh, Scott was all effort. He was a hard worker, and you know, and a fun guy to be around. You know, he would give it his all, and he was a good player too. And I'll always cherish the days I spent with him.
A lot of people have said this, that you and Scott, and there were others, of course, Tommy Dockham, Jerry Williams, the list goes on, were in a very special group, kind of in the in crowd at Logan, because you were athletes, so on. But not so much that as the fact that you were authentic. You you were easy to talk to. You didn't just think you were special.
Well, I wasn't, but yeah, that's true. I mean, and that goes the way Scott lived his life. And Chris hit it right on the head. He was authentic and he was very genuine, and I believe that was his strongest characteristic.
Chris, you grew up having a deep faith at Trinity, the same church that our family went to, and your faith continues. Scott, although tells a story that you would be together in church or Sunday school, but that he would take pretty comprehensive sermon notes from Pastor Nelson, who was one of my favorites, but that and then you would copy his sermon notes.
I'm not sure about that. I'm in 9th grade and he's in 6th grade. I don't know.
Well, then maybe you asked for a copy, or he asked for a copy of yours, or you.
I think he asked for a copy of my archived sermon notes when he followed up in Sunday.
And by the way, do you still have those sermon notes?
No, but I still have the pen I got for confirmation. No.
I believe Chris got busted on that when Scott said, I don't know the answer, and he wrote me either.
I want to hear a paper route story.
Well, of course.
We used to tell those when we'd be on a road trip.
Yeah, well.
Somebody would tell a paper route story. Those were great.
Well,
Johnny was the paper
I think
boy.
everybody but Mike, who grew up kind of in a special section of town, we were in the low-income area on the north side. So, in fact, I got a bike shortly after Dad passed away. I was 10 and Scott was 6. With a basket on the front, and I said to my mom, why is there a basket on the front? Well, because you got to get a paper route starting next week. So it's like, Mom, I'm only 10 years old. I know, but we need money in this family. So
you still have it, don't you?
I still do, yeah. Had those big wide tires. I'm sure a lot of our viewers remember that. But you guys had paper routes. So Scott, by the way, took my route after I graduated a little bit into working at Sandy's restaurant on the north side. If you guys remember Sandy's.
I remember the day you left and you went to the boys club. You were 16 years old.
Well, actually, okay, let's be truthful. When I went to Sandy's to work, I was actually 15. I didn't have any choice because we needed money. And I lied. I said I was 16, but I was really 15. But when they found out that I was only 15, and I was crying in Walt's office, he said, "Oh, Terry, don't worry about it. We'll keep you on."
Well, you look like you were about 8.
So you guys had similar upbringings. We talked about that. In fact, when we were preparing for the show, we talked about Chris and I growing up in a small house and really about the size of this studio, So there was some commonality there, too, wasn't there?
600 square feet for me.
And John, you grew up in a house with, like, what, there's 6 kids?
10.
10 kids, whoa.
8 kids and 2 parents, but, I remember Scotty telling me one time about your homestead, which was quite small, but very nice. But he told me later in life, he said, it was so tight in there that we had to go outside to change our mind.
Exactly. So the living room was our bedroom, by the way. Because it was a pull-out couch. I don't know, Mike, you don't remember those days, of course, because you had your own bedroom, but, But actually, what was the most special trip that you and Scott took on all of your travels?
There's so many of them. The trips to Kansas were nice. We stayed at a nice place. To California, right at the base of the mountains, we stayed there and had a great time at a nice hotel, and we just had a lot of good times together. Well,
and of course, you had so many listeners back then because most of us couldn't travel to those remote destinations, So, well, we're going to be right back. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back. More of this week's show, a tribute to the life of Scott Erickson.
The thing I'm most proud of when I think about our company is the reputation that we've been able to build in this community. Our technicians have done a great job going out and performing magnificent jobs for the customer. And our customers have rewarded us with some really great reviews online.
We have over 150 5-star reviews online right now.
Our technicians do a great job out there, and our reviews show it.
We can say without hesitation, when you choose Schneider Heating and Air Conditioning, you'll be glad you did.
When you're faced with the decision of selecting a monument to honor someone dear to you, call Lewiston Monuments for a no-obligation consultation. Lewiston Monument is a full-service monument company, serving families in Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin for over 4 generations. You'll find beautiful granite, marble, and bronze memorials, all at competitive prices. Their experts can help you design the perfect and unique memorial. Lewiston Monument. Call today or on the web at lewistonmonument.com.
Welcome back to this special week as we celebrate the life of Scott Erickson. Again, 3 of his closest friends, Mike Kearns, John Pendleton, and Chris Weiss. One of the things that was a lot of people observed, including both John and Chris, was how organized Scott was. He would spend hours, according to Mary, preparing for broadcasting with you, everything color-coded. You'd have some insights into that. And I'm sure you recognize that too, because you were equally as prepared.
Well, I tried to be, and I tried to keep the best stats I could until some hosehead came over at halftime of the game to get the stats with his pad and paper from me.
By the way, just so our viewers know that he's talking about me coming over and get some insight into what happened, and so I could come back and improve my broadcast, which was a Herculean task.
But he would ask me for these papers and sheets, and he'd come to the game with them all color-coded and prepared, and he just knew everything about what was going on. He put stats on the sheets and things like that, and was very well prepared.
In the article I wrote for the Tribune, I talked about the spirit of a champion. And you were one of the first people to send me a note after you read it on a Sunday morning. And I talked about his being a cancer warrior. And a lot of people don't know this, but the cancer started when he was very young. And he had several bouts of cancer, including, and then heart issues and so on. A warrior. I'd stop over and I was there quite often, especially the last several months. And how you doing today? I'm doing pretty good. Never complained. Never once. Mike, you've had your share of health issues. You have the spirit of dignity and courage also.
Well, thank you. I had a stroke about 2 years ago and triple bypass surgery done on Valentine's Day a year ago. It'll be coming up on 2 years now, and I feel great. And you know, I complain too much probably, not like Scotty. I mean, he never complained about anything or talked about his health issues very seldom when we were traveling. Go ahead.
I know he shared some of his setbacks with both you, John, and Chris, and I know that the passing of our mom several years ago, the passing of Joni just a few months ago, and now Scott's passing, he confided in me about how much of a loss and how that influenced his life in terms of a hole in his heart. Because like you and your family, like all of you, Scott was very close. He was such a, he was the highlight of all of the birthday parties and Christmas and all Halloween, all the holiday parties, because he illuminated a room, because he was, everyone enjoyed being around him.
He did, and you know, one of the things that I'll always remember and cherish the memory about Scotty is, as you pointed out, a lot of people were never aware of the fact that he actually fought cancer for almost 50 years. I can remember very clearly going in his bedroom when he was 19 years old, having just undergone chemo, and being shocked at how tough he looked, but you know, he never complained about it once. He just, as you just related, he just said, yeah, I feel okay. And you know, that was kind of his attitude throughout his life, and never a complaint.
And of course, you knew him from a little bit of a different viewpoint too as he got older, because you two were constant companions, Chris Weiss, in Arizona. And even calling Terry up at 2 o'clock in the morning from your favorite hangout, the Rusty Spur, and putting the background music on, and of course Sue really liked that, and Scott would always say it was your idea, but that was one of your favorite spots, because you would listen to the Psychobilly Rodeo production, because he was one of your favorites, the country music star.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of great times in Arizona, probably for 15 years. You know, Scott would go down with Mary right after the state tournament when you guys were done, and they'd spend 2 or 3 weeks hiking and, you know, golfing together, and then Mary would go home, and Scott and I were a couple of old bachelors hanging around downtown Scottsdale. And
but you found things to do, didn't you?
And there was another place we went to, this Handlebar J's, and we went in there one night, or walked up to the entrance, and the woman said, well, it's a $50 cover charge. And we said, well, we don't think so. Is Elvis here tonight? And they said, no, it's Hank Williams Jr. So, well, he's not worth $50. So we left and came back later on around 11:30, and the concert was over, and we walked out the back door, and there was Hank Williams set up with a tailgate party by his tour bus with a bunch of young, lovely groupies. And Scott and I joined in with a couple of beers, and that's when we called you at 2.
That's what you did, 2 o'clock in the morning.
And Terry says, you guys are having too much fun.
That's
I'm
right.
getting a ticket and coming down here.
I did say that, but then I looked at Sue, and I think she went like that, and I don't think so, not right now.
No.
But at our house after the funeral, we shared some stories, and to me, that's those special memories are what's significant. And we talked a little bit about his dressing, his habits of being dressed so well. And I told a story about when we were young, Mom made sure our hand-me-down clothes, which is what they were in good shape. She washed them, ironed them, and so on. But he, as you guys all know, he was pretty particular on how he looked.
Well, he was impeccable. He'd show up on that first tee, and you know, everything was totally color coordinated, from his shoes to his belt to his hat, and you know, the collar was standing up, and the shorts were pressed with a crease down the middle. But anyway, you know, like all of us, John and I were part of the Bundle Boy group, where you don't know if you're going to shoot par or shoot 120 from day to day.
We can do both.
And so one day, Scott was kind of struggling out at Cedar Creek, and we got done on the 18th, and we shook hands, had a great round, and Scott says, I've got an announcement to make here. I'm done golfing for life. You guys will never see me out here again. And so,
Pretty hard on himself.
and we said, yeah, whatever, we've heard that. So we go in the bar, have a couple beers. Scott loosens up a little bit, and somebody says, Scott, did you really mean that? He says, well, I've kind of rethought that. And he said, you know, if I quit golf, it'd be a waste of $30,000 worth of golf clothing.
Golf clothing is right. Just as we end the show, I just wanted to mention one of his good friends, Jerry Williams, talks about Scott being a marathon man, because for 3 decades they would go hunting out in the Dakotas, and that Scott would insist on going from early morning until way nearly dusk or after, and they would, oh, it's too cold, it's too wet, you know, we're done, Scott. No, we got time for one more bird. So Jerry, they didn't want to do it, but Scott talked him in. That's why he became the marathon man.
He used to talk a lot about Jerry on road trips too. You know, he called them. They'd talk on the phone while I was driving, of course. And that's another thing, Scott. He said, I've been doing this for 23 years, and I've never driven this vehicle one time.
Well, and Mary, of course, his best friend and wife for 27 years. I said in his eulogy that Mary was like an angel in running clothes, because that's exactly how
he talked about her a lot on the road, too.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. So we have just about a minute left, but just going around the horn here quickly, what would Scott, starting with you, Mike, be remembered for the most?
just how friendly of a person he was to everybody and anybody. It didn't matter who it was or what it was. He was very friendly.
And Johnny.
Humility and class.
And Chris Weiss.
Yeah, well said, John. Yeah, just a friend to all. It didn't matter what their station in life was, and but he took a true interest in people. He loved people.
Well, this week we honored the life of Scott Erickson, remembering that a life lived for others is a life worth living, certainly. Scott lived for others. We can do the same. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's show, our version of a Hallmark Hall of Fame presentation as we salute the life of Scott Erickson. So my brother, his friends, what a great show this has been. Mike Kearns, John Pendleton, and Chris Weiss. So I'm your host, Terry Erickson, hoping that you have an active and healthy week ahead. Thanks for watching this week here on 7 Years.